Welcome to the Time is Right podcast. Time is Ripe is a digital journal podcast of Ripe Creatives. Ripe Creatives is a ministry that leverages the arts for the purpose of missions here in Philadelphia and around our region. Time is Ripe is hosted by Ripe Creatives founder Scott Smith and features various guests from within the Ripe community and our extended family. Each episode focuses on a specific experience that our team hosted here in the city or an outside event where someone from our team was booked to perform. We hope you enjoyed today's episode.
Y'all might have lost your way, but I'm still out here living my purpose. Know that I'm the best to do it when I'm living the service. Once you see light, you understand that sin is whack. Be aware.
What's up, fam? Welcome back to the Time is Right podcast. My name is Scott Smith, and I'm your host here on this amazing podcast. Today, we have a very special episode. It has been a few months since we recorded one of these things. I think we released one recently, which is cool, but it's been a while. We've skipped a bunch of episodes to try to get to this one because this one may be the most important episode of the entire season. It's possible. Who knows? The date that we're going to be talking about was March 29th, 2025. It was a Saturday. We were at a place called Christ Community Church in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and our team, Ripe Creatives, hosted an event called Oracles. Woo, woo, woo. To break this thing down, we got a couple of guests. We also got a few guests that are not here with us on the microphone today, but they're in spirit. We'll tell you about them as well. But first in the room, I got three guests. First up, Jarrett Moses.
Hello.
The man, the myth, the legend, the producer of The Time is Right, owner of all things Top Mop. He's the best, and he's going to be a big part of this episode because Jarrett doesn't just produce this podcast. When we produce an event in Philly, Jarrett is the production manager. He's the behind-the-scenes guru that makes sure we have everything we need in terms of sounds, lights, production elements. So
even when I'm sick, I make sure you have all the gear.
Yes, even when you're sick, you make sure that we're good to go. Shout out to Good Soil. We didn't do an episode about that, but we are about this.
Right.
I got two other guests. Sergine, welcome back to the pod.
Hey, what's up?
If you don't know Sergine, she was on all of the Pass the Mic tour episodes. She's also been on a few other ones, like a Two Lines episode where we talked about her feature. She's one of my favorite people in all of Ripe. We love her to life. Right. She also got the sass, as we found out. Listen, that Texas episode...
What are we really talking about? Don't do this. Don't do this.
You saying,
you like started already. I didn't even. That's crazy. Okay.
She's like, "Do you want to be the 10?
Yeah.
Do you want me to 10?" We're like, "How about a 5?"
It's wild.
Learn today about sass.
She said, "What you mean?"
Yeah, all right.
Oh, it's gonna be so fun. I can't wait.
I'm really trying to be on my best behavior.
No, let it go. You're good.
The last guest on this particular episode is also a returner to the pod. I think his first time on was about the December Creatives Cafe in episode 2 or 3. I don't even remember. That was a while ago.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Jake Doggett, welcome back to the pod, my guy.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Jake Doggett, always a pleasure to have you, my friend. And Jake's name has come up on the podcast more than he's been here because Jake is the newest Ripe poet. So he joined around Thanksgiving of 2024. I think the week of Thanksgiving is whenever that happened officially, Ripe Giving.
Yeah.
And Jake's been a part of the community ever since. He's been rocking out, writing new poems, performing them different places. So, and he played a very special role in the night of Oracles as well. So I'm really excited about this. I don't want to go too long into like monologue, so you guys might have to pull some different things out. But I just want to talk about leading up to Oracles because a lot led into this thing. Last year, we went to Texas and we did the tour looking at Sergine as I say this. Sergine, myself, Greg Snow, AVG, Misspoken Poet. We went on a tour together, both across the state of Pennsylvania and a few months later to Texas to see our good friend Red Lion. And those two trips, I feel like, were the impetus for Oracles getting a resurrection. AVG in particular was just like, looked at me in Texas at the Airbnb that we got in the middle of the week there and was like, hey, you got to bring Oracles. Like, we got to do this. Christian poetry doesn't have a showcase platform anywhere anymore. You know, will you do it? And I don't know if you remember much about that time period of us deciding on doing Oracle Sergine, but would love your thoughts just even on that.
Yeah, I definitely do. I think when all of us got together and we went to Houston and we were out there with Red Lion, I felt like there was so much conversations around how do we curate something within the inner city, right? To have a bunch of poets come together and just spit, like just do what they do best, right? And do it for God. And I just remember, of course, AVG, you know him, he's like, always like contemplating, like, yeah, that sounds good. Like what to do. I think when we got together and we started talking about it, we started thinking about like what poets would be a good fit for 2025 if we were going to do oracles. And I think as we started to brainstorm around that, we knew for sure we wanted Red Lion. There was no doubt about that. And I know of course, all of us were going to be on there, but it was just like, okay, who else do we feel like can really add value to that moment and really make it like special, but also impactful?
Yeah. Yeah. The word we used, I think, a lot was like highlight, like who's highlighted. And I think the first year going into 2025, and this was almost 10 months out, like last summer of 2024, when we started talking about all this, we had like 40 names on a list, 40 poets. And we knew we needed to whittle that thing down to like 7. And we knew Red Lion was one of them. So we had 6 slots with like 40 names. What I think was the criteria for us was, one, how well do we know them?
Yeah.
Not just their poetry, but off stage as people. What have we seen them? How do they operate as an artist? Is there humility and a mission and a ministry side of what they do? And then I think the kicker, like in the voting process, as we whittled down that list to the specific names we picked, was like, do most of us know these people? Not everybody's going to know everybody because that's impossible.
Yes.
But, you know, Sam Jam as a reference point from Pittsburgh, my little sis basically in poetry, but you guys all met her on tour.
Yeah.
If you hadn't met her on tour, she probably wouldn't have been on Oracles, even if I'm vouching for her, because there's, 5 of us at the time making decisions. But because everybody met her on tour, everybody's like, oh, Sam Jam, yeah, right? And similar to all the other names on the list. I know, Jarrett, for you, like, you weren't a part of the planning the poets,
Right.
but you were a big part of planning this event. And I think you have kind of a really unique vantage point because of how long you've been a part of Right.
Honestly, I'm surprised it took us this long to do oracles because, I mean, we've talked about it a couple times on the podcast, how you and I met back in 2019. There was originally plans, like the second event I was going to do with you after Creatives was I was going to help you pull off a large scale poetry event. And then it ended up falling through because of COVID and everything that happened that year. But I'm surprised that it took us this long to kind of like get it to resurface. But I think that was kind of divine intervention just because of how the poetry connection of Ripe has changed in the past, even the past year. And it just makes sense that now was when we did it versus 2020.
Yeah. Yeah. We had the flyers. Oracles was the branding.
Yeah.
We had the Eventbrite up. We were selling tickets to it. And then the pandemic happened and we canceled it. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy that it took this long. But I know for me, like coming out of the pandemic, Right Poetry's starting to form, but then Two Lines takes off, right? Greg and AVG start their own poetry event, Third Space model with Two Lines. And my feeling on it was like, man, Two Lines is accomplishing the goal of Oracles just in a different way than an Oracles would, right? An Oracles is like a big thing. Everybody's coming together. It's a Christian poetry event in a church. But Two Lines is still doing ministry through poetry in the city of Philadelphia, just in its own unique way. And so I kind of always felt like, man, Oracles doesn't necessary if Two Lines exists. And then, other things like Poets in Autumn were still happening. All right, shout out to Ezekiel and the P4CM Rhetoric crew. Back in the day, Poets in Autumn was still coming to Philadelphia. And then 2 years ago, they came and they didn't continue the tour. And so Poets in Autumn kind of taking a step back, it almost felt like is there a gap here that we're supposed to fill for spoken word, for the church, from the church? To be missional, yes, but also to build up the body of Christ in Philly. There's not really a space for that now if Poets in Autumn isn't here. And that was kind of the impetus, I think, to finally do this in 2025.
Yeah. I think even just looking at the lineup, it shows the timing, like how many of these people were features at Two Lines in the 2 years leading up to this Oracles. Hanak, Cookie Bee, Red Lion, Sea Lily, and Smiles, all 5 of them have been features. Obviously, Sergine too, and AVG and Greg, who were also on the list, but coming from our side. But yeah, just that to kind of show that there was a kind of culmination in all of the Ripe efforts from all sides. You know, Two Lines joined Ripe, last 2 years ago, right? And then Two Lines has been growing, and then all of these people who we now have like solid foundational relationships with, and not just Scott has all the relationships, but now we all have relationships with them. I think the timing of that has been really, really neat to watch.
I mean, even taking in the whole idea of the growth of everyone in their craft, like how many of you weren't even poets then? How many of you didn't have the chops to even get put on that lineup? Like, it was so long ago. I think you were doing hip hop still, Jake.
Yep, that's probably true. Yeah.
Oh, in 2020, yeah.
I hadn't met Scott in 2020.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Like
water.
Like Greg probably wouldn't have been on it. You probably wouldn't have been on it. AVG definitely wouldn't have been on it. Yeah. And now look at you all of you are like leaps, bounds, like leagues farther in your craft and your abilities, in your growth, that now you were on it and part of the planning of it.
Yeah. I mean, you just went through the list, and the only 2 names that are missing off of that list, plus Ripe Poets, obviously, were Ashley Clark, who was instrumental in starting Ripe Poetry with us. I don't know if we ever start Ripe Poetry without her investment in us early. Mm-hmm. And then and Sam Jam, who I already mentioned from Pittsburgh, who's like a mentee of mine that everybody met on tour. Yeah. And so those 2 are the only 2 that weren't at Two Lines as a feature sometime in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And then...
Oh, and Poetic Will.
Yeah.
He was a feature at Two Lines.
Yes, he was. Yeah, he was.
Well, we just forgot to mention him.
You're right.
Yeah, you're right. But yes, he was a feature at Two Lines as well.
I forgot. That was inside at Deeks.
Right next to the pool table.
Yeah, that
was a brutal night.
That was a rough night. I was sitting in the back.
It was a forgettable experience.
Yeah, because I was like stuck on the aux cord all the way in the back. I didn't hear one of his poems.
Poetic Will was great, but it was not his fault. It was brutal. It was just a brutal setup. Shout out to Greg for changing things around from there. But yeah, so all these people, 6 out of 8 or whatever, were Two Lines features at some point. So that time lapse is super important. Then you have Sergine, Misspoken Poet, AVG, and Greg. Yeah. And then lastly, the last one on the lineup that was not on the lineup originally, wasn't on the flyer, didn't have a bumper video made for him, which we'll get to, but it was you, Jake.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's because at the time when we planned Oracles and did the promo run for it, you weren't even in Ripe as a poet. You were part of the Two Lines team, but you weren't functioning as a Ripe poet. So we added you to the lineup. Did you know we were going to do that?
No. So actually, I'm just reminded right now, when I saw at the Creatives Pier like last summer, I think it was one of the first times I saw the Oracles flyer, like physically, with AVG in the tuxedo standing in the front. And I think I was there that night to do a new poem that I was working on that I think was Flytrap. And I saw the flyer and I was like, I need to take poetry more seriously. Like that was that was right before the retreat where I ended up asking to be a part of Write Poetry. But I remember that seeing that flyer, seeing how official that Oracles lineup looked, I thought, man, I'd love to be on Oracles 2026. And so that's when I kind of started taking everything much more seriously. But by the time I joined at the end of 2024, I was like, oh, there's no way. And I was fine with that, but I was like, there's no way that I'll be on 2025. But I was hoping we would get to 2026 and then I would be on it. But I had no idea. I was excited for it either way, but
yeah.
I mean, even speaking into just how much you pushed yourself to take it more seriously, I think when Oracles was first thrown at me, like when Scott threw me the date to put in my calendar, I don't think I even knew that you did poetry. I thought you just helped out with Two Lines. And then hearing you like throw out a poem at Creatives in December in 23, I think it was the first time I heard you. Yeah. Like, it was insane. Just how far you've taken yourself with it is awesome.
Appreciate that.
I thought it was fascinating. I think what was the The one before the fly trap, what poem was that?
Ordinary Man.
Ordinary Man. That's when, like, I think that really stood out to me. So I know when we did the Right Retreat, and they were like, listen, what do we think about Jake? I was like, it honestly is a no-brainer.
Yep.
Pieces were just thorough through and through, and your delivery was top tier, so it made sense. And then on top of it, when we thought about oracles, and Scott had mentioned, like, what do we think about Jake? I was like, of course, put him in. Like, he's on the team already. And I was like, people need to hear what he has to say.
Yeah, it was fun because it was a 6-6 lineup, 6 guys, 6 gals. First half, second half with an intermission in the middle. And, you know, it was just kind of like, we're adding Jake somewhere. He's either going to be the first poet, he's going to be the 7th poet at the end of the first half or at the beginning of the second half. So let's just find out where we put Jake into the mix, because as a Right Poet, we wanted to extend that honor, you know, to be on the show. And it was a no-brainer in my view, which we'll get to. But the whole process, I'll just say, we just got to say thank you real quick. Some of the production elements. Oracle was a real show. And I mean that from the sense of, like, from a theatrical, you know, production element side. Most poetry events that you will go to, and this is a great vibe to them, is host, curating, emceeing, facilitating the transitions between poets. And it's great. That's normal in the poetry community. But we wanted to do something kind of a different level for oracles, and we felt like it was important with how many poets we were putting on the lineup to limit the amount of words in between each act, so that people really listen to the words of the poet and not an MC. And so shout out to Sean Perez.
Yeah.
Just want to publicly say Stars and Bars Creative Co. Hit that man up. He's amazing. He went through and grabbed footage for all 12 poets that were on the original lineup and made bumper videos for each artist to walk out to. And so when one poem ended and the people celebrated and applauded and they walked off stage, the next poet was walking out on stage with a video of them performing with, like, some music behind them on screen. And they walked out and they took over the mic and then they performed. It was just like back to back to back to back. And so Sean had a huge part to play in that. I also want to shout out Raffy Taffy for being our primary videographer for the night. We're going to have videos of oracles dropping all year from everybody who performed. Mm-hmm. And I genuinely believe those are going to be the best performing videos on the Ripe Creators channel. And then shout out to Gio as well.
Yeah, last minute.
Last minute. Told me he wasn't going to be able to be available for the date, and then called me about a week out and was like, hey, man, I just really want to get my team into a space where we're, like, doing ministry, and it's like a worshipful environment, because most of the places we shoot aren't that. Mm-hmm. Like, is it cool if we pull up? And he basically was like asking, can I get free tickets for the guys? And I was like, you can get all the free tickets. Like, you're not paying to come.
You're not even taking up a seat. You're walking around with a camera, please.
And then shooting. So we got a ton of footage from this thing.
Yeah.
Like 6 or 7 shooters in the room. And then Jared Fluck. I want to shout out Jared Fluck.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about him because I kept getting, I knew it wasn't you, but I was like, what's that other guy? I was like, what a J, right?
It was Jared and Jarrett.
Yes,
and
the JJ the Jet playing
Mop top
together.
and top mop.
Yeah. He showed me how to
He kind of looked like a
the
white
mic.
Jesus. But Jared Fluck, old friend, ran into him at the beginning of March at a conference. And I was just like, hey, what are you doing March 29th? He was like, I could be free. And I was like, what's going on? And I told him what was going on. He was like, I'm there. And he ended up capturing the photo. Like, a lot of the photos that we've gotten back from Oracle so far that have been amazing shots were by Jared while he was running lights. I don't know how he managed to do that, but he did both. He's a superhero. But shout out to Jared Fluck, shout out to Sean Perez, shout out to Raph and Gio, and of course you, Jared. Thank you for everything you did to make that night possible. But thank you guys to all of you guys that are listening, especially you, Jared, being here, for just making this thing one of one. Yeah. Like, I don't think anybody came to Oracles and was not blown away by what we did from a production standpoint for a poetry show. It was like bar none. You know, it was really, really, really good. But anytime you take a risk and you step out in faith to do something big, to do something in excellence, to do something impactful, you are inevitably going to experience some spiritual warfare.
I remember seeing a text from you when I woke up that was sent at like 3 a.m. that you were in the hospital with your son.
Yeah.
And I had already made plans to pick up Red Lion from the airport. but he was on the flight when all this was happening. Or I think you might have caught him in his layover, and he was able to, take a second to pray. But anyway, I picked him up from the airport, and then we got some food and went straight over to the site. And we were pretty much there all day. It was pretty intense.
When we got that text, it was like, okay, now we know, all hands on deck. So as soon as I heard that, I was like, all right, let me get my stuff together and get there earlier, and I'll just camp out until it's time. Because we knew at the end of the day, especially you're the curator of this, and I'm like, for you to be experiencing that, especially with your son, and Dar, you know what I mean? It's your infant, and it's just a lot of that just was like, you know what, this is not by coincidence. But at the end of the day, it was like, you know what, God is definitely for this. And I think in a lot of ways, it just showed the resilience that we all have to come together and make something happen in light of some of the challenges that were being experienced. Yeah. Even with the situation with Sam, that was, yeah.
Yeah, so the thing that we're alluding to is my son Levi, love him to life. The night before Oracles, his temperature dropped to 93 degrees. If you just Google a 9-month-old, at that time, 93 degree temperature, it's going to come up as hypothermia, right? I mean, we thought man, this is got to be a broken thermometer, but we're testing ourselves and we're normal, and he's 94, 93, 93. And you're like, what in the world's going on? So I was actually open heart poetry the night before because Sam Jam had come in earlier from Pittsburgh, and we went to North Jersey, and his temperature just dropped 5-6 degrees while I was in Jersey. Mm-hmm. So I'm driving back from Jersey. Dar's calling an ambulance. We go to the hospital. We sit in the hospital all night. Never get seen. I'm not going to bash what hospital we were taken to by that ambulance right now publicly, but it's not a fun experience. And by God's grace, it did start to climb back up by about 4 a.m. or 3:30, 4 a.m., and then we came home. But, I mean, I was supposed to be at Christ Community Church at noon, and we didn't get home till 5 a.m., and you're not really going to sleep for 6 or 7 hours with a baby that's touch and go like that. So, but I was exhausted physically, but I will say spiritually, I was almost emboldened by it, to just know, oh yeah, this is a telltale sign that God's going to do something amazing. I think that's been our experience time and time again. How much experience, spiritual warfare we experienced doing ministry together over the years. Yeah. When it's crazy and it doesn't make sense on paper, the devil is big mad and we're doing something right that God's going to bless and honor. And I think that was the testimony of the night. But I shared the monologue to start the night, and shared even some of that story just to kind of set the tone for the night that we're not messing around here at Oracle. It's we want to see God move. And then Abel came up.
Killed it.
Definitely killed it.
Shout out to Abel.
Did one of the best poems of the night.
Yeah, first of all, he knew he was wrong for freestyle. He killed it. But I said, come on, sir.
Yeah, he did
a whole freestyle, acapella. I said, okay.
I was like, man, why are you flexing on a post like that? That's not fair.
I said, we hear you.
He was like, my pen worked a little bit too.
A lot of it.
It was dope.
He's tough. But Abel did a great job. And part of that was a buffer to make sure everybody got there. Yeah. I love the way we designed the event with having the 5 o'clock doors open. We had an hour to let people get in. 6 o'clock show starts. Yeah. Opening monologue was longer than it should have been. My apologies there. And then Abel does his set. And then right around 6:30 almost, 6:25 is the first poet. Yeah. And then we're into the first half. And the first half kicked off with Cookie B. Mm-hmm. Shout out to Cookie B.
Special thanks to Cookie B.
Yes, Cookie B.
Cookie was so funny to me because we wanted to curate the lineup based upon content. Mm. And Cookie was the only one of the lineup who didn't tell me what her poem was about. And I was like, it honestly doesn't matter because Cookie's the starter.
Yeah.
She's the one to start this show because Cookie has that delivery that's just she's in a pocket. She knows exactly what she's there to do and who she's there to do it for. And why she's there, all the things are just settled with her. There was never going to be the moment's too big for Cookie B. No. And she absolutely murdered it, and I think set the tone for the rest of the night.
Yeah, God definitely brought the audience from going crazy during Abel's set to be absolutely locked in
Yeah.
on the poetry for the rest of the night.
She definitely has that way of her cadence, and she was just like really poised, but she was able to capture the whole room. And I think it was amazing that she was started first. I was like, this makes so much sense. Even if we didn't know what she was going to talk about, we knew somehow she was going to do something that was relevant. And I think she used her discernment, and she was right.
Shout out to Cookie B. Thank you for going first.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it is a sacrifice to be, in some ways, the guinea pig for the night.
Yeah.
But she set the tone just so perfectly. After Cookie B, we had Poetic Will, Mr. Open Heart Poetry himself from Jersey.
Yeah.
Yes.
I thought his set was so fun. Like his poem, in the middle of it, he like broke down.
Yeah.
My man's heart was open. Pun intended.
He had this moment where like he started almost like weeping on stage in the middle of his poem. And I actually had a chance to talk to him after the event about, the impact that Oracle's made on him. And, we'll end the episode with this stuff. But I'll just say for him, he was just like, man, I felt like I was worshiping while doing poetry. And I'd never felt that before. Like poetry was always a ministry, doing this on mission, like sharing a message for God. But he's like, I felt like God was ministering to me and like meeting me in that moment as I was performing. And I never experienced it like that to that degree before. So he just like, he was breaking down. He felt like God was hitting him. And it made his performance all that much more raw and real.
Yeah.
Piercing. I think, needless to say, by the time Abel, Cookie, and Will had gone, like whoever was trapped in the audience at that point, they were locked in for like a night of unexpected spiritual experience, revelation. There was just a tone that was set very early on that there was going to be a depth and a brevity to every performance
For sure.
throughout the night. And I think everyone just continued to carry that torch forward.
I think it was a key point too, watching Cookie B step up, and then Poetic Will and his level of vulnerability as a man. I think definitely set the tone in the room for anybody else who who wrestles with that. And I think just that authenticity, the vulnerability, and even just like you said, the purity of it. I think somewhere it was just like you could see there was a reverence. If people didn't know what to expect in that moment, those moments, I think they started to take it a lot more seriously and saw the depth that was like the layers underneath, not just poetry, but like spoken word for Christ. You know what I mean? Like Christian poetry and like what that does, like what oracles actually means.
Yeah, that was so good. Poetic Will, shout out to him. We also have an episode on this season with Poetic Will. If you want to go back and check that out, Willie Douglas, his government name.
Not his government name.
And OHP, Open Heart Poetry, is also in Philly now, at least for the time being as we're recording this episode, doing some shows in Philly. So just like a lot of synergy over the months and years ahead, I think, with Will. But yeah, it was just beautiful to have him. Super glad that he was there. And then after Poetic Will, we had Hanak, destined to inspire is his artist name, which I didn't know him except through Two Lines. Shout out to Two Lines. But Jake, you guys had him feature at Ride Free. I think it might have even been the month after me, I think.
Yeah,
like I did January, he did February.
Yeah.
And I think you were in April and Jayla was in March or something like that. Maybe 2 months after.
We had a solid run of features back to back at Ride Free, even though it was a crazy venue.
He
Shout out to
performed that
Ride
night
Free.
too. That was the first time I heard him. The night I featured.
Yeah, because that's when we were doing we were getting the sneak peeks a lot of times where the feature for the next month was coming in and doing one poem.
Yeah, he has some crazy creative writing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like he has that piece.
Oh
My goodness, he has these alliteration Johns that are just
Pens on
crazy. But he did Scars.
Yeah.
And he had a theatrical moment there where he like took off garments and took off bandages. So he had like bandages on his hands and arms as part of like kind of showing the piece as he was delivering it. I thought it was really powerful, really raw.
Yeah. I mean, it was just really, the lineup ended up being really well curated. You know, I don't think that's all because of the genius of the conversations we had about it, but it's also, I think, a lot because of God. But like Will coming out with that emotional performance of a lesson, like the actual words of Will's poem weren't as intense as Destined to Inspire. And then even Sam Jam following that, like they kind of took us into a valley that then Smiles and Lily ended up taking us up out of. But it was like just, yeah, really, really fun ride.
Yeah, it really worked together.
Mm-hmm.
And after, as you just said, after Destined to Inspire with Sam Jam, man, I could sit here and just gleam for like 30 minutes over Sam Jam. But I just want to say, as somebody who is in an environment in Western Pennsylvania and Indiana, PA, that does not have right poetry, that does not have Voices in Power, that does not have Two Lines or Open Heart Poetry or Dare to Listen or, First Fridays, right? There's no ecosystem for spoken word. For her to be as good as she is unbelievable. Without iron sharpens iron in a performance kind of space, for her to be as talented as she is, as kind of a lone soldier for Jesus as a poet in Indiana, PA, is unreal. And I assumed she was going to do great. I thought she did amazing.
Yeah.
Like, it was one of the best poems of the night. And I was like, go ahead, Sam J, look at you killing it. Now, she had a fun ride after that we'll have to say something about. But
Yeah.
it was one of the most impactful things I've seen. It was her poem.
Yeah.
And she got to do crazy ministry time with people after. And then she went through her own set of spiritual warfare.
Yeah.
But Sam Jam killed it. I don't know if you guys feel the same way.
She was vulnerable. It was good. Her performance was just thorough. It was good to just watch her, because I've seen her on tour when we did the Ripe tour. I just enjoy her.
Yeah, I think she was one of the only, if I'm looking at it, other than Ashley Clark, Sam Jam was the only person who I hadn't heard or watched perform. She just blew me away. I was like, whoa.
Yeah, she killed it.
Yeah.
Shout out to Sam Jam. After Sam Jam, we went, as you said, a little bit more punchy,
Yeah.
a little bit more, Philly flavor.
Yeah.
Smiles, Andrea all smiles. She changed her piece, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we had her plan to do the piece that's Letter from a PK, and it's a great poem. But that pulpit thing that she ended up doing, I was just like, yo, that's an oracle's poem. So she basically personifies the pulpit in a church.
From a stage where a pulpit would be on a Sunday.
Yes. Also really, really interesting from that standpoint. But she personifies the pulpit and basically is talking about what she sees behind the curtain with pastors, and then she flips it to like what the pulpit sees in the audience with the congregation and calls both out deeply, and also like speaks life over the good things.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not just like, oh, pastors are out here cheating in line and stealing for money. It's like, I've seen the pastor who's weeping to try to get over the text to make sure that they communicate God's word faithfully too.
Yeah.
And same with the congregation. I see the people texting in the pews.
Yeah.
Right. And she got a couple just bars in there that are just like
Yeah, the Beyonce.
crowd hitters.
And I was gonna say that
The
one
bull
was,
jaw.
the Beyonce tickets.
Yeah.
She's amazing. She definitely was speaking from different perspectives, and just her presence in that moment. I think she was just so locked in to like giving her all to it, and you can feel it in the room.
I've been so excited to have run into Andrea again, because I didn't know that she was doing poetry. And then I ran into her VIP, and that was kind of like in the time where she was on this hot streak, running every feature in Philly. And it was just so cool, because I actually went to high school with her, and neither of us were doing poetry at the time. So to reconnect in this scene, to know someone from a different time in life, and then have that relationship build through poetry has been really dope. And yeah, she's phenomenal, as has already been said. But it was really cool to watch my fellow classmate go up there and rip the stage.
So funny story. My mom was in the audience, and later on I asked her how it was, and she was like, "That girl with the she had the butterflies in her hair." I said, "Yeah." She said, "Oh, that girl was talking something." She said, "That's how those pastors. Yep, they something." I was cracking up though, but my mom really enjoyed her.
Yeah,
shout out to
so
Smiles. My mom was like, "Yeah, I liked her."
She's just got that Philly swagger.
She does.
And that Philly punch in poetry that you expect in this city. That I think was really important to have that. To have all these different tones. And that was the cool thing about the lineup.
Yeah.
Everybody was so different.
So different.
And Smiles brought something very specific that it would have been a loss to not have that on the lineup in the first half the way that it was.
Yeah.
Shout out to Andrea All Smiles. We love you.
Hey, Smiles.
After her closing out the first set of poetry was C. Lily.
He went up and did the thing.
Christopher Lilly. I knew Christopher Lilly was going to do what he did.
Did 8 art forms.
But I forgot that he was going to do what he did.
Led us into worship.
This man decided he was. See, Lily's so funny because he's so like. I feel like if he's an Enneagram, if that matters, I think he's probably 8. He's a challenger. He's always got to push back. But you book C. Lily and you're like, C. Lily, this is a poetry night. It's spoken word specifically. We want C. Lily the poet. And he's like, yeah, nah. I'm gonna be C. Lily, the multidisciplinary artist.
I was gonna say, then he's like, oh, Rashid's here. Never mind.
Yep.
Yeah, he was like, Rashid, can you play the guitar? Because I'm about to sing. And he did a poem and sang, and it was amazing. And Lily is amazing at it.
Sang that place
Lily
down.
is one of the dopest poets ever, though. Like he got some pieces that are 10, 10, 10, 10, 10 level. And he just was like, you know what? I just want to worship Jesus real quick. Forget the poetry for a minute. And it was great. It was great. Shout out to C. Lily.
Yeah, I will say the first half did get a little bit dark. All of the poems were like on kind of like a downward trajectory. I mean, there was glimmers of hope in all of the poems. But like, I will say, if there was any place for C. Lily to be like, yo, I'm about to hop into a worship set real quick. Like, I think it was appropriate at the end of the day for him to do that at that time.
Yeah, he did a great job. He did a great job. Shout out to Lily. That was the first half of the show. And then we had Mr. Rashid St. Fleur going into an intermission. And which was great. Was he before or after the intermission?
He was before the intermission because I just remember trying to text him or text Ann or text somebody to tell him to just stay up there, not even unplug, walk back, and then walk back out. I was like, just stand there and go straight into your set. It's fine.
Yeah, he was already on stage because Lily brought him up early. But Rashid is amazing. Yeah. We felt like it was really, really important to kind of like recalibrate. We didn't know C. Lily was going to do what he did, so we probably didn't need Rashid. But it's always good to have Rashid, and Rashid's amazing. So the plan to have a singer kind of encapsulate the first set and reset the tone and kind of like cleanse the poetry ear palette, so to speak.
Like a sorbet.
Yeah, to be able to get into the second half of the night, I think it was really important. And then we did do an intermission because you are drinking from a fire hose. Like, these are really great poets, dense poems.
Yeah.
Okay, let's have an intermission, which also gave a chance for people to support the artist, which they did, which was amazing, and then come back into the second half. And coming out of the intermission, I did like a little spiel about Ripe for like 30 seconds, and then I handed it over to Jake Doggett.
Yeah. Yeah. You could have talked a little bit longer.
I was going to say, the only apology I have for the night is how few people came back from the intermission in time to see Jake.
Well, I will say,
you talked plenty long, Jake.
I took it upon myself to talk for a little bit until more people came back in. I think the majority of people were back in by the time I actually got into the poem. But on the run of show, I'm pretty sure it said Scott was going to talk for like 5 minutes about Ripe. I think you were going to pull up a slide or something. That dude, you were up there for like 30 seconds.
You really were.
And all I hear is I'm in the back, like, just like, I think I was talking to Simone, who was back there. Shout out Simone, helped so much being back there, running all the poets
Thank
through.
You, Simone.
Stage manager Simone.
Yes.
Yeah,
she's amazing.
Oh man, how did I feel? She was potentially going to be on this episode, and I forgot to say thank you. Thank you, Simone.
But yeah, I just was completely caught off guard, and then Scott is just like, and so welcome to the stage, Jake Doggett. And I was like, all right. I go out there and I just see there's like still a line at the vendor tables out there, and I was like, oh, this is a disaster.
Jake was like, so when I was 3 years old, he starts telling his whole life story.
Is he rambling right now? I was like, what is going
man,
on?
nah.
He's
I
like,
felt
so
like Greg up
Moses
there.
in the ark with Noah, and then there was a guy named Abraham. He'd be
Jake is like one of those thankful people. So he's like, man, I just want to thank everybody in the room. Just thank all the performers that went before me. I just want to thank Scott.
Let me name
for
them by
curating
name
it.
and remember their pieces.
That part. Jake is always so grateful. So I felt like when he got on stage, it was just like a big shout out to everybody that he could think of before he started his piece.
If it makes you feel better, I was blasting you in the lobby speakers because I'm like, these people are going to hear him whether they're in here or not. And I cranked it all the way up and they're like, hey, can you turn it down? We're trying to have conversations. I was like,
No.
no, I can't.
It's like this,
appreciate
the
that.
intermission is over. Guys.
Not like that one time you cut my sound off all the way. I'm like,
No. You did something to that cable, bro. It stayed on, I swear.
Shout out to previous episodes. That was a good one too. The Good Soil up at East Stroudsburg. Check that out from season 3. No, Jake. It was funny because I called out Jake about being like very long winded as his intro, because that was not the vibe, and he was like, "Dude, like you screwed me over.
Yeah.
Like this was your fault. I was just trying to give people a chance to come back in. I was like, fair." Just don't do it again.
and I won't.
Just don't do that next time, please.
man.
But Jake, you did Tides of Time.
Yes.
Yeah.
I will be honest. I put you in a box to do that poem because I love it so much. You could have done any of your poems, and they all would have been amazing. They all would have fit at Oracles. But I just remember that Tides of Time poem. I mean, Jarrett's even talked about it on the episode. Like, he's not even really a spoken word fan. But Tides of Time is like one of those pieces where if he clicks the play button, he's listening to the whole thing because of how good it is. So I apologize. I put the clamps on like you had to do that poem, but I thought it was amazing. How did you feel like Tides of Time went?
No, I mean, just I would say I didn't feel clamped in. Because I was such a late addition. Like I just didn't want to take away from anything from the show. So I was like, whatever you think is best.
Yeah.
Like I didn't feel like clamped in. Like I was very open to have you say you should do Tides of Time, and then I did it. It's actually funny. That morning I was doing it with Redline because I picked him up from the airport, and that Tides of Time delivery for me is usually like, this is probably gonna fall on deaf ears, but like Meek Mill 2004 DVD rap era like delivery. And Red had actually challenged me in the car. He was like, "Don't do this tonight, but like, what if you just like change the delivery a little bit, like play with the delivery, like make it like a conversation." He's like, "But don't do it tonight."
Totally did that.
Let me guess what you did.
Yeah.
So I was like, "No, I won't." But then like I don't know. It was in my head. So then I ended up doing the delivery a little bit different, which is like less like rapidy and more I guess like spoken.
Conversational.
Yeah, conversational is kind of how it was. Which I thought worked better for the night because it was a spoken word show that was conversationally based. I mean, it maybe could have been better if I was more punchy to bring people
Back in the
back
room
into
or whatever.
the room or
yeah,
whatever.
just because of
but,
that dynamic.
But yeah, by the time I finished the piece, I was like, well, that was how it was supposed to be done tonight. And I just walked
you
off
trust the
stage.
sovereignty of God.
Yeah, for
in
sure.
those things. Yeah, I mean, it is such a different piece depending on how you deliver it, which is kind of cool. And I think that's one of the things that you've even been, talking about as a poet to other poets that are starting or trying to help people grow. In those types of like mentoring conversations, is it's like, man, this is finding the room and the audience, and how am I supposed to deliver to this room?
Yeah.
Right. And we talk about this even with like AVG around how do you do those setup times and those setup moments to curate a set if you're doing a full set. Those little elements are like, those are just tools for your tool belt, because you'll write, the poems you have will not be the best poems you write.
Right.
You will only write better poems if you keep after your pen the way that you have. So your poems are only going to get better and better. But having that, I can do it this way in this room, or I can do it this way in this room, like that's just an asset to have, So
And
I think you killed it.
It speaks to your ability to memorize poems. Not throwing shade at anyone, but you knew your poem the day of.
There's so much shade being thrown right there.
That's
But yeah, no, I mean,
wild.
just to speak to that for a second, that's something I've been
Fighting words.
telling people is like, I think that's the difference I've seen. The difference in spoken word and poetry is spoken word is to be performed, and poetry, I think, is to be read. So if spoken word is to be performed, what does that mean for you as the performer? What is the piece to you? And I think what it is like memorizing the piece is not enough. Like, you have to embody a piece. You have to make it a part of yourself, and then you reanimate it when you're on the stage. And then that, to me, that gives you the ability to perform it any way, any night, for any room, because it's not, you're not just memorizing the words or the pattern or the pocket. You're memorizing the DNA, the structure of the piece, and making it a part of yourself. And I think that's a big part of growing in spoken word.
To speak even more into that, you have all these poets who act like their artistry and their craft isn't taken as seriously as other platforms, but then they walk up on stage and they're reading off their phone. You don't see Abel reading off his phone to do any of his songs. You don't see Rashid reading off his phone to do any of his songs. Why do you have to read off your phone to do your performance?
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, I've been seeing people do that. I've done it maybe once or twice, even though I don't prefer to do it. But I think, like you said, making sure at a certain point, if you had this piece for at least 5 to 6 months, you should know it by now.
Yeah.
But I would say
It's a lot of it's reps too.
That's true.
Right? And from my end, I mean, Sam was one that, like, she was like, I don't know if I'm going to have this memorized because I had a baby, and my brain works differently now since having a baby. My memory's shot. She did memorize it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Ashley was another one, which we'll get to next. She did not have it memorized. She probably did, but she didn't bring a phone up. She brought a book up. And that's my recommendation is, if you're at an open mic night, bring the phone up and whatever. That's fine. Like, because you're doing a rep, you're trying to get better. You're trying to, even potentially workshop a piece, see if it even works.
Yeah.
But when you're performing on an event like Oracles, no phones. And I think Ashley did a great job of, like, okay, let me bring the book up and use the book as an element of my performance. So you can do it that way, but it needs to be creative. I've seen people do it with a scroll, John, like
the old head that has the papers and he throws them. He has a
Yeah,
piece called
Kenny
Throwing
Walker
Papers.
Jr.
Yeah, Kenny Walker Jr. Yeah.
always throwing papers.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like, he's an older gentleman.
Yeah.
And he's like, yo, my memory, no way. I cannot remember pieces at this age, but I can throw paper. And it's a whole part of his, like, shtick.
Yeah, and it's
people know
entertaining. It's
it
entertaining.
is
He's about
absolutely
Kenny coming in. He's about to start throwing papers,
paper.
and you gonna have to clean them up
And you gotta
afterwards.
pick up the
'cause he's
paper.
not
You
picking
get
them
down
up.
on your hands and knees to grab all the
Yes.
papers. I used to do that, man. I used to throw
He doesn't even
paper.
clean it up.
Yeah, you're right about the embodying thing, though. Like, when it's memorized, it can be embodied.
That was real deep. I like the way you put that together.
Yeah, the DNA structure.
Yeah,
Go
I
ahead.
was like,
That's
okay.
why I pointed at him in the middle of his thing, because I was just like,
Like, is
Jake
that a
is
new
so
poem
deep
you
all the
starting
time.
right now?
Yeah, he's like, I'm about to write a poem about poetry.
About
poetry.
memorizing
That part.
poems.
No, but
Shout out to Jake. This episode was so long that we had to split it up into 2. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll be back with part 2 of Oracles 2025 next time here on The Time Is Right. Until then, stay right.
Boy, that's it. Yeah, I'm done with the games. I thought this was
You can learn more about Ripe Creatives and support our ministry by visiting our website, ripecreatives.com. To never miss a future episode, you can join our community text line by texting Time is Ripe to 215-273-3540. Time is Ripe is produced, recorded, edited, and released by Top Mop Productions. We hope you enjoyed today's episode.
living my purpose. Know that I'm the best to do it when I'm living the service. Once you see light, you understand that sin is whack. Be aware, wolves plotting on the next attack. Armor of God, give me the word. I'm always strapped. My brother's able, never question if I got his back.